So the session here will be about 30 minutes. I think we may get started. There's a couple of other folks that may join as we go, but I want to make sure we're not wasting everybody's time. So please feel free to join along in the background. You can open up Giraffe on your side and follow along what I'm doing. And also, this session is designed to be interactive. We want it to be something that you can cut me off, ask me a question, tell me where you're getting stuck. These are all the things we expect you to do in this kind of session, as opposed to just watching training videos online where it's not interactive. The whole purpose of this small group is so you can interrupt me and ask questions. So let's start at the very top and figure out how to even log into Giraffe, and then we'll come back into talking about the high level of Giraffe. So if you haven't logged in before, you can go to giraffe.build, and that's giraffe spelt like the animal, 1 R, 2 Fs. And any of these orange buttons will get you logged in. So you can click Get Started for free, log in, get started. Really, there's just a million ways to log in, get started. And that'll take you through to the app. If you haven't signed up before, you'll need to put in your name, email address, phone number, blah, 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 classic software stuff. But once you've done that, you can get in. And if you're a customer, you'll have your full account set up. And if you're a trial user, then you'll still have a full account, but it'll be limited to one project, which will be plenty for what we're doing today. So let's take a minute to log in and go ahead, click that log in. And what you'll see when you log in is probably your hometown, wherever you're living. Giraffe will center the screen on your IP address. So I live in Orlando, Florida. So it always boots up here, but sometimes I work in a co-working space that has some kind of VPN in Detroit. So every now and then Giraffe boots up for me in Detroit. Let's go through the UI. Hopefully you've all logged in at this point. The map has a lot of classic map controls. We can zoom in and zoom out with scrolling. We can right click, and right click actually is only available in 3D mode. To get into 3D mode, we can hit either down here on the 2D or 3D button. You can see that toggles my screen back and forth. And once I'm in 3D mode, if I right click and drag, I can pan around where I want to be. So those are just very simple classic map things. Every map tool is very slightly different. Like if we want to zoom into Asheville, I'm in 2D mode right now. I can hit T on my keyboard, pan around, zoom in, zoom out. And whenever I hit T on my keyboard or the 2D, 3D option, it always snaps me back to true north. And that can be really helpful if you've gotten deep on a project somewhere, you have no idea what's going on. I always just like to hit T, and then I know my screen is in true north. The other things to know in the UI is the data layers on the left-hand side. So we can build up in our projects as many layers or contextual layers as we want. And just to give you a very quick demo on that, I can go into my 3D buildings layer, and you see if I toggle that on and off, I'm getting a different transparency, and then ultimately it's off. Portfolio we'll come back to. That's where all of your projects live. Satellite, that's a satellite layer. And we can add more data layers as we go, but we're not going to go through that right now. The right-hand side is really what makes Giraffe very special. So I'll come back to that. But down the bottom here is what we call our drawing toolbar. And this is where all of your useful tools will be. I may just zoom in a little bit so you all can see a bit better. We have our map search, 2D, 3D toggle, drawing layers. Again, we'll come back to that. And these are our drawing tools to be able to just draw anything on the map. Building typologies, landscape typologies, infrastructure, just general drawing tools, and then smart geometries, which if we have time, we'll get to at the end. Then on the right-hand side is where all of the data gets passed in Giraffe. So if we start to draw something, you'll see right now there's no information there, but if I decide I want to put a hotel in this tiny little town, then Giraffe's brain starts getting to work and we can see the analytics fill out on the right-hand side. So generally speaking, if we want to analyze something, we're going to be looking at it here on the right-hand pane. All right, so let's find a site that we want to look at. And the use case that we'll be exploring today is like a feasibility study for a site assessment. But Giraffe is very, very capable of doing lots and lots of different use cases. And what I'll try and show you today, even though it'll be in the lens of a feasibility study, it should give you the basic building blocks to take it and make it, relevant to your local market, your product type, your use case. We have a lot of brokers that use Giraffe. We have REITs that use Giraffe, portfolios. The whole slew of the real estate industry can get some value out of Giraffe. And so I'll try and just show the fundamental building blocks today, and then we can take them and apply them to specific use cases if you're interested on another call. So you can see I love just panning around the map. I like zooming in places. I'm going to do my demonstration in Atlanta, but you can choose to do this anywhere. We're not going to make it site specific. So if you want to navigate to a specific address, come down to the drawing toolbar, hit the search map button, and you can put in a specific address, and that'll take you straight to a site. Now, I particularly like Atlanta because the city of Atlanta makes their public data available in a really nice, easy to consume format. And we're going to talk deeply about layers in a minute, but I want to start with drawing, as drawing is sort of the heart and soul of what makes Giraffe special. So I'm just going to randomly pick a spot. I'm going to pick this corner lot here on the side of the downtown connector. And let's just have a quick look at it. I'm going to turn on the satellite. It's this sort of underutilized, I don't even know what that is, park or something like that. So the first step to drawing is we can either just straight up draw something, but I'm a bit more analytical than that. I want to define my boundary to begin. So the way that you will see that on the top right-hand side, you'll see a button that says draw boundary to save project. Or if you have already drawn something like me, then you may have a boundary already drawn. So I'm just going to click these three dots down here, edit project boundary. I'm going to clear the one I had existing. And now I'm going to define my boundary here. So you can see I just have this basic drawing tool. I'm going to come up the side of Moore Street, and I'm just clicking at the vertexes here. I'm just defining a nice polygon, and then I click on the original point, and that closes my boundary. Now, boundaries are one of those things that it's always nice to have an accurate boundary, but it doesn't really matter. We can always come back and edit it later as we get more information. So I've just drawn this boundary. You can see what I have each of the edges measured for me, and I have the gross area of this site measured for me as well. And that's one of the things we always love to say about Giraffe. It's always to scale, and it's always in context. So we didn't have to think about getting this in scale. It's just ready to rock. And now I can see my cool site looking at downtown Atlanta, and I've just popped out of top view, and I'm panning around my site to see what's around it. Okay, so let's now explore the fundamental building blocks of drawing in Giraffe. If you look down on your drawing toolbar, you'll see the pencil tool, and the pencil tool is not what I want to show you, so apologies for that. If you click the three dots on the right-hand side, you can see our general drawing tools, polygon, rectangle, and these will be familiar to you, line, if you've used any kind of drawing tool. Let's start with drawing a polygon. And a polygon just lets me draw any crazy shape that I want. And you'll notice that there's a hotkey P here as well as I go. So if I click on that, I can start drawing a polygon, any crazy shape that I want, and just click on the original point to close out that polygon. A couple of tricks with drawing. If you want to draw as a rectangle, a lot of buildings that we do, you can just select the rectangle tool. One of the things I always like to show is that when you draw we can fix our lengths by typing on the keyboard. So I just typed 200 feet there whilst I'm extruding out this this rectangle, and it works beautifully. So, and again, if I want to adjust a shape, I can click and hold, type on my keyboard 50, and it'll push it back 50. So just covering that again, I go drawing tools, rectangle. I'm going to click my first point to draw the first side of the rectangle, and we'll give it 100 feet. Click again, 200 feet. And now I have this great rectangle. Now, when we've applied when we've got a rectangle on the map, you can see it's not very smart at the moment. Other than it being to scale and in context, it's just a polygon with an area, or a rectangle with an area. We want to give this rectangle meaning now so that Giraffe understands it. I'm going to introduce a couple of concepts, and I'll just get you to follow my screen at this point as opposed to doing this on your side, because this is an important fundamental point, and then you can go and experiment. To give this rectangle meaning, there's two kinds of meaning we want to give it. One is we want to represent it visually. So if this is a commercial building or a residential building, we want to see it extrude out in 3 dimensions. But then two, we also want to give this rectangle meaning analytically, so Giraffe can interpret it and measure the areas appropriately. So to give this rectangle meaning, we have to assign what's called a property. And that properties we can assign one by one on the left-hand side. So I'm going to assign a property called height. And we're going to make that height 80 feet. And again, just watch along for this bit. And then I'm going to add a property called color. Whoop, I just typed height when I meant to type color. And I'm going to drag to red. So I've just made a red blob that's 80 feet high. Now, that right there shows you the fundamentals of describing a rectangle in 3 dimensions and then giving it a visual cue or a visual color. However, you could imagine if you had to assign every single property to a rectangle, it would be a very cumbersome process to get anything done in Giraffe. So I'm going to delete those and assign to the rectangle what Giraffe calls a usage. And a usage is a way of collecting many properties or many assumptions and assigning them en masse to my rectangle. So this is a part you can follow along to. Click on your rectangle. And over here on the left-hand side, under properties, you'll see this rectangle has the ability to assign a usage. So let's assign a usage called commercial. Now, when I assign the usage commercial, you'll notice that it gives us 4 floors of commercial, but it also gives us an analytical understanding of that commercial building. And we have a whole bunch more concepts now. There is obviously something that's defining the height of the levels. There is an efficiency to get us from gross build to net rentable. There's ratios that are being crunched on FAR. How much FAR are we consuming on this site? And that's driven by many more properties than just the color and the height. And those are all stored on the usage level. Now on the feature level, I still have the ability to change specific things like number of levels. And that might be because we have 2 commercial buildings on this site. One of them's 3 levels and the other is 10, right? That happens all the time. So we need the ability to define them separately. So let's spend a second looking at usages and try and understand what metrics are driving our analytical interpretation of these shapes. So the usage editor is up here on the right-hand side in this black sliders. Top right-hand side, give that a click, and you'll see now it defaults to residential, but we can see all of the underlying assumptions for residential in the drop-down. Let's go to commercial. And now we can see all the assumptions for commercial. Before I move on here, does anyone have any questions, or am I going too fast, too slow?
No, that's all good for me.
Great.
Yeah, no questions.
Excellent. So you can see under commercial, we've got these ideas of an efficiency, which we'll come back to. There's two efficiencies here. There's a floor-to-floor ratio. There's a number of parking spaces required. We've even got things like costs and incomes, which we'll come back to as well. Let's go and look at our efficiencies. So if you hover over the efficiencies, I'll explain to you what they mean. Our first efficiency relates to the gross floor area, which is a net area used to calculate FAR. And again, this comes down to what kind of building you're designing and what kind of efficiency or how efficient that floor plate is. The cell efficiency takes the gross build area and gets us to the net rentable number. And importantly, we have those two efficiencies in Giraffe because oftentimes a county or a municipality will care about a certain measurement of floor space that they would then say constitutes FAR. And that can be different to what the developer can then go and make a dollar from. So planning controls and underwriting a building are often two separate concepts. And so we keep those two efficiencies separate. So again, this efficiency relates to FAR. This efficiency relates to net rentable. So feel free to play around with those. You know, I might crank up my efficiencies a little bit here. And we'll have to probably reduce the size of that building because at 90% efficiency is generous. Let's say it's a 13-foot floor to floor. I may have interpreted the zoning code and I understand that the amount of parking required here is closer to 3 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. I'm going to come back to the costs at a later point, but let's just start there. You can see as I hit save changes there, because I jumped the floor to floor up a little bit, all my buildings shot up slightly. So then let's go back and look at analytics. And I'll bring this down to our 5 stories so that we can reasonably get our 90% efficiency. You can see now in our analytic pane, we have the gross build area of 134,000 square feet, net rentable of 120,000 square feet, and that's across 2 different building envelopes. Our FAR is 0.66, and that's derived by this gross floor area calc. And then the rest of our calculations are being derived from the model itself. How much floor space, how much building footprint do we have covering the site? How much hardscape? We haven't drawn any roads yet. Open space, height of the building, facade area, et cetera, et cetera. So, so that's drawing in a nutshell. And just to give you a teaser trailer on how fun that can be, you know, if we want to then draw a few things like maybe a road network here, I can click on infrastructure, road, and roads draw as lines. And if we want roads to intersect, we can just draw multiple roads and they will self-intersect, which is really nice. We can always add nodes to get corners going, that sort of thing. I can add trees, landscapes. The options are really endless here, and they all follow that same principle of being just a shape or a geometry that has no particular qualities about it until we assign a usage to it. So that's drawing. Very important concept that the features and the properties are tied together, and that's what helps you get this large-scale analytic view. So let's pause there for a minute and have a look at geospatial information. Often when we're doing a master plan or we're trying to find an appropriate site to develop, we're looking at things outside of just what's on the site. We want to understand what the planning controls are, where the boundaries of the site are, what future development in the area looks like, what the demographic looks like. And a lot of that information is publicly available through GIS systems. And so Giraffe has the ability to connect through to any GIS system. If you hit data layer here on the left-hand side, Giraffe has already done a lot of connecting to public data systems. So you can see I have here a bunch of the Atlanta GIS, City of Atlanta GIS data repositories. And so I can just click on all of those. And when I close this down, you can see that starting to load in. So I've got those tax parcels booting up here. I've got land use and all sorts of things loading in. But let's say there's one that I want that's not here yet. Like I want to understand where the MARTA train stations are. Giraffe actually lets you add layers yourself. So I'm going to open a new tab and just search for Atlanta GIS maps. You can see I've done this before, so I'm going to click on Department of City Planning GIS. Now your local municipality, I'm sure, will have something very similar. I'm going to click on the planning viewer. And usually you want to find something that looks like this, layers. And I'm going to come down to this transportation layer, hit the 3 dots and hit description. And description takes me through to this view, which is like a back-end view of what's going on. And I'm just going to copy that URL, head back to Giraffe, add data layer, create your own. Now that was an Esri map server. Paste. And when I paste, you can see I've now got the ability to add any layers from that particular data set. So if we go turn down all the stuff that we've already added, get rid of the tax parcels, get rid of the footprints, land use, character areas. And we start clicking on some of these things. Let's have a look at the new planning. You can see the new rail lines that are coming in right past our cool little development. There's a MARTA stop here, MARTA stop over here. And so on and so forth. We can go through this data set and find layers that are interesting to us. I'm going to put the transportation layer in. I just hit next. I can give it a name. I'm going to leave it as this for now and hit save. So now I have just gone and added a brand new layer from the city of Atlanta and put it on my map. And that's beautiful now for my project to tell the story or the context of what's happening, why we've chosen this site. And we can get more or less complex with that kind of functionality, but I'll just leave layers there. The last concept I want to introduce for the purposes of this training is being able to build custom metrics against our development. And so we really will only cover in this time 3 things: drawing, layers, and then thirdly, custom metrics, so building your own calculations. And we do that through what's called analytics. Analytics is over here again on the right-hand side. Analytics is a way for us to look at calculations that relate to a certain site or to a certain series of buildings or drawings that we've done. So you'll remember in the usage editor, when we were looking at commercial, we had these metrics around costs. I'm actually going to change the hard cost number down to be an imperial number. So I changed mine to 300 per square foot. And you'll notice it doesn't denote what the units are here. So it's just an assumption. And we're going to go and denote that now in analytics. So let's just build one calculation here that looks at the hard costs for what we've drawn. So we do have templates, which you can go and check out on your own time. But I'm going to just show you the fundamentals of how this works. So hit start with a blank slate. We'll call this hard costs, or maybe construction costs is a better word for this category. And then I'm going to add a measure. And a measure is, as it sounds, something that we want to measure from our Giraffe project. Now, the property that we want to measure is the gross area in feet squared and the measure hard cost. So component A is the gross area of a feature. Component B is the property hard cost that we'd saved against that feature. So to get the cost, we just multiply A times B. Let's give it a name. We'll call it hard costs. Unit is currency. You can see now our project is going to cost around 49 mil. And if we want, we can flick through each of the typologies to see how it's calculating. Once hit save, we've got this metric here now on the right-hand side. And if I want to show you how dynamic this is, if I now make this number of levels go up, you can see my building cost goes up at the same time. So if we'd spent the time to build out a more intelligent master plan here, and we had things like incomes and a lot more cost data, then we could actually have a full pro forma built out here on the fly, or maybe a full economic model, a zoning consideration, a population forecast. The use cases are sort of endless here, but the key is that it's really just an assumption that's tied to a geometry that we can then determine how it calculates. So if I just spend a few seconds here whilst we're at the end of our call to draw a more detailed master plan, I'm going to grab our smart geometry feature and draw some apartments. And this we'll get to in our next training session in Giraffe 102. This is using our smart drawing features. We can actually draw a real master plan. Underneath that, I might draw a multi-deck car park. And we're going to say that's 2 levels. And I want it to generate parking bays on there. So it's actually counting a real set of parking bays. I'm just going to turn down the 3D buildings. You can see I've got parking bays there that are actually being drawn and counted. Perhaps over here, we want to turn this Bell Street that comes down to our transit stop into something slightly more attractive. And I'm just going to put the satellite on the bottom because no, I don't want to do a group. I just want to be able to see what's underneath it. There you go. I want to do a avenue that comes down here. So I'm going to grab another smart feature called avenue, and we'll just draw it down like this. It's going to be more of a boulevard kind of vibe with trees either side. And all of these things you can see are contributing to our costs as we go, because they're just taking areas and build costs. Perhaps we'll put a park over here. Some trees in it, probably way too many trees there. Let's just drop our number of trees down to say 10. We can make the trees dance a little bit. And we've got a mixed use development here very quickly, which is going to cost us about 284 million at a very simple takeoff, yielding about 75 units. We've got about 150 car parking spaces, but based on that input we had of 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet for the commercial, we're grossly underparked for this particular project, which would make sense. So that's 12:30. I'm going to pause now for questions. I know we have a bunch of people on the call that may have a particular question. Does anyone want to see anything in particular, or struggle to follow along? Want me to show anything else?
No, that was good. I think we're just showing off. It was really, I just need to go away and start clicking buttons and having a play with things. But that, as a brief overview, that was spot on.
Yeah, awesome. Finn, I think you'll enjoy it a lot. And if you're interested, I know Alex would be very happy to set up a call for us to go through it with your specific use cases, as opposed to just at this generic level. And Holly and myself would be very happy to do that with you.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Brianna or Steve, do you guys have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. This is a really good overview. I know it's been a while since you gave us the demo, so this is a good refresher. And I'm going to talk to Jack about what he would want me to, start building out in our platform. So, well, on my project for Giraffe. So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Maybe just to show off in Atlanta, because I love Atlanta.
Yeah.
We can actually go ahead and bring in the urbanized data set as well. So if we do that, we have that as a layer, which maybe it's in Giraffe team. I always forget where it is. Data layer, urbanize. for those of you not familiar with Urbanize, Urbanize is a media publication that we've partnered with that map developments in major metros in the US, and they use Giraffe, so they make it available to our users as a layer within Giraffe. So you can see we've just done this cool little master plan down here, and in the context of what's happening in the city, there's quite a lot going on, but there's not a whole lot going on in this area, and Brianna might be able to tell me why that is. But there's this guy over here. What's that? If I click on that, I can see it is
It's apartments.
It's apartments.
TOD project.
Oh yeah, nice. Right next to the station there. And the developer is HJ Russell. Pretty cool. Marta Next Development Park. Yeah, love it. So maybe my project's not so crazy. I just picked that site willy-nilly, pretty close to the road there, but for a commercial building, maybe that's okay. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I'll let you go. Please feel free to jump into the app and mess around with it. Call us if you want a personalized demo, but that's really Giraffe 101. And I think we'll give you the tools to go and be successful really quickly. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
James.
Yeah, pleasure. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.